Well, we've got a bit of a power panel here of experts on AV over IP, if I can get my words out. Slight change to you blame me for this, because I was a bit late getting stuff changed. I'll start from the end and work round. We've got Mike Allen, who's CTO and founder of Exterity. There's, again, Simon Truby, who you're familiar with, Senior Audiovisual Designer Project Manager at CBI. To his left, and instead of Daniel Schwartzberg, but you're not instead of anybody, Gabi. Gabi Shriki, who is Senior Vice President, Head of AV Business at Valens, and you're for part of the HT-based Alliance, aren't you? And the inimitable Mr. Justin Kennington, who is the extremely vivacious orator and president of the SDVoE Alliance. So we've stuck them together, you see, today. Thought we'd light the blue touch paper and see how much smoke came off. But networking is something the AV industry is positively afraid of. And every time I go anywhere near networking, a bit like security, you can see the visible pallor creating on people's brows and the beads of sweat appear, and they suddenly start to change the conversation or go out. The AV industry is just almost, part of it anyway, is actually almost afraid of the networking. Do I relinquish my power? Can I do my job properly? Is networking going to take away that instant ability to fix faults and manage technology and so on, 1,000,001 items? If you're already familiar with IT and a network, it's quite straightforward. However, there seems to be almost not a clear picture about that chestnut in AV, which is interoperability. You know, can you put anything on a network, and can you monitor and measure it effectively? And we seem to be always having arguments about, well, unless it's got that badge, it won't work. If it's got that badge, it might work, and so on. What we need is a clear view about how networking is affecting the AV industry and how we should approach it and manage it, and so on. Do you want to kick us off? I mean, you know, both of you, and in fact Mike is also there, we'll go to the third, and of course Simon is a consultant, both brought the reason, is how the AV industry should be approaching networking, how it should be planning and running its network infrastructures.
I think you're absolutely right.
I'm trying to do it from a business perspective rather than get bogged down in certification. Although that is the point, because we just, you know, confuse everything. We're trying to get a bigger picture view.
Networking is a scary topic, right? And that's because it's a disruptive technology, because it has the capability to sort of take apart the way that we've done all of our technology infrastructure as the AV industry. And yet, with that kind of terrifying disruption comes a lot of opportunity, right? This is how new technologies get born. This is how new market leaders get established, whether we're talking about manufacturers or the consultants and designers or just installers themselves, right? A disruption like what the Ethernet network brings to us is something that if you get ahead of it and educate yourself, gives the opportunity to take a lead that wasn't available before. So with fear comes opportunity.
Gabi, would you agree with that?
No.
Fantastic.
And we're off.
I want heated debate here. I really do.
Realistically, Ethernet is here for the last 30, 40 years, and it hasn't been disruptive. And Justin will tell you why exactly this moment is more disruptive than before. But realistically, I think we need to approach it, again, from the customer and the end user point of view. Let's identify the problem that you have. If your problem is wiring a campus level or, God forbid, between cities distribution, then you have to go over the IP network. If you need to solve a problem which is within a domain, within a confined venue, be it a meeting room, auditorium, or whatever, you want to use HDMI if you can, because that's uncompressed, low cost. The only problem with HDMI is that it's short in distance, and this is where you need to use HDMI and HDBaseT. So within the, let's say, in generalizing, within the room, I want to keep using HDMI and HDBaseT. And why? Because I can get it lower cost and highest performing, and I avoid clogging the corporate network, the IP network in general. And it's also for the installers much simpler. I mean, if I'm in a need to install 100 meeting rooms, I don't want to be there spending hours and hours in every room configuring every IP port on my switch. I want to go there, plug it into the power, have the cable done, and I'm out of there, and I'm hopefully never coming back. So what I would expect to see in the future more of a hybrid approach. I solve the problem within the room, HDMI if I can, HDMI, HDBaseT if I have the distance to the projector or display, and have a bridging product to go from the room outside if I need to have an inflow or outflow of information from the room. With the explosion of WebEx, Zoom, all these web-based collaboration platforms, I see more and more the need for the wide distribution becoming over that network, that Zoom platform or Microsoft Teams. Not specifically high quality AV distribution over IP. That's more problematic because the scale of this, I mean the premise of IP is being able to scale. And we all use AV over IP as a single term, but this is way more complex. You have AV over IP, which is a wireless solution. That's also AV over IP. You have AV over IP over 1 gigabit network, and you have over 10 gigabit network. You have solutions within the gigabit network that are using codec number 1 and codec number 2. These things don't talk to each other. So I don't think you can identify a single technology that will solve all your problems. And therefore, I see more realistically that people will use HDMI, HDBaseT in room, find a bridging device to go outside of the room. It could be a 1 gigabit network, it could be a 10 gigabit network. Specifically to the 10 gigabit, I think it's really problematic because the ability to scale between switches, the uplink is very costly and very limiting. So if you're not worried about non-blocking distribution and you need multicast 1 to 1000, I would do it with 1 gigabit network. If I have a smaller scale and I need really the best quality and I must do 1 to 20, 30, I'll do a SDVoE type of a product. But realistically, and I think even you guys that are doing both AV over IP and HDBaseT would agree that the most cost-effective and high-performance way is to combine the technologies.
Over to you, Mr. Allen.
Well, I have to kind of agree with some of what
so
Gabi said, and maybe also get back to on the IP boat a little bit. So the key thing ultimately is to understand what the customer is trying to achieve, understand the constraints of their particular situation. So these things always have to be taken into account. I agree there are a lot of different IP-based technologies, but I guess I'm a networking guy by background. I've worked in networking all the way through. I came to AV later on in my career. So in some senses, I tend to look upon networking as an opportunity, not a challenge for audio video. The reach that IP networking gives you, I think, is what its major benefit is, your ability to get content to any corner of your network. And sure, I agree with what you said, Gabi. There's definitely places where you go, right, this is absolutely the right technology for the bit of wire as opposed to something that's carrying packets. And those situations are real. But certainly for me, the predominant way to transport video is and will continue to be will be over an IP infrastructure. The current debate, if you want, in the AV over IP market is the one that you just alluded to, though. There is a plethora of different standards. They've all got certain benefits, some and maybe even some disadvantages. And I think the big challenge for the industry is to reduce the number of islands there is currently, and try and identify more, and again, your point was fair about interoperability. That's one of the big key challenges. Certainly, I can't see a future where the number of islands that there is today sustains for very long, and if we don't sort that out, that will be a big problem for the industry, because it will look too difficult for the end user in choosing which of these various technologies are available to.
Sounds fair to me. The man with a tough job.
That's it. I was going to say, how high is the fence I can sit on here? No. It's a great stage. No, I think actually, there's some good points from everybody there. From my point of view, it's about the functionality. That's the key thing that's trying to be achieved. The functionality and the risk profile that's with that. So when I say risk profile, if you need the technicians or the operators, etc., to support the delivery of the video signal as well as the quality of the video signal, that's why we tend to look at HDBaseT, absolutely. Where you want to be able to get flexibility, and it can be within the same room as well, depending on the actual operation of the room. I mean, flexible rooms are a prime example where AV over IP is a great use within that space to be able to open up flexibility without having an expanded chassis matrix to be able to cope with that. So I think it's about again, as you said, the use case the functionality within there, and then also the support and risk profile with it. That's where we really look at it in terms of how we're going to deliver that. Unfortunately, going back to a bit more sort of real building type things, space is an issue as well. It's a real issue that affects us in the design process. And so having the ability to provide rack solutions for large matrix solutions is a challenge as well. And that's why I said, as I said, flexible spaces, for me, AV over IP works very well for those type of spaces, because we can't centralize a large rack that's going to attribute to 6 rooms that are then going to combine and close in different combinations. It's really about the functionality in the space. We do a lot of hybrid systems, as you say, where we've got both solutions in there. That's both locally within the room and actually external to that space as well. And I think you're going to see that more in the high-end solutions, the high-end spaces, the lecture theatres, the stages, the auditoriums, those type of spaces definitely, because actually it's about who you're trying to reach. And as you said, whether it's one to many or whether it's actually on a local scale, or even if it's down a specific broadcast format that you want to deliver to a device like a vision mixer, where you want to go down an NDI protocol. That's absolutely where we're seeing it. The big challenge is who's involved in the process of bringing AV over IP, the difference in the teams that are involved in there, the roles and responsibilities that cover over that, and the fact that actually the network is honed and really owned by the client side, whereas the integrator side of things are traditionally, as I've alluded to before, is a project-based delivery. So there's an overlap and a change in the way that AV integrators need to go there, not just about understanding, but offering that support to deliver video over IP is somewhere there is a big gap. HD-based very stable, very easy for integrators to manage, very good uses in the, as I said, in room, certainly in where we're seeing lots of where it's needed for that sort of support, also where it's needed for the video formats as well. For the moment, that's not saying that actually the video formats won't be achievable over IP, but it's that piece that's going there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I listened to you very carefully in the last session, and the point about the integrators, the partners, working with the customer, understanding the use case, understanding the constraints. Oh, you've got a 2-year-old network you've just installed, it's only got 1 gig to the edge or whatever. I mean, that might be a mistake, but that's what they've done. You have to work within that, and they have to be able to guide their customers, guide the consultants as to actually what's the right solution for the customer.
Absolutely. And I think if there is any standardization of AV over IP and any move towards that, it needs to take that on board. It needs to bring those companies that have got an existing infrastructure in place along the journey as well. And what that means that there's a set of standards to get you there, so that they know if they're to deliver what they've got today, you're at one level, but actually the network of the future allows you to take it up a notch. It needs to take that journey as well, because otherwise you're isolating. I can't suggest the percentage, but you are isolating a big portion of the client base, which is where at the moment, because of knowledge, because of not understanding their own network, or the integrators not understanding the network, HD-based T is probably being used in places where, or fiber's being used in places where actually AV over IP would be perfectly placed to deliver that as a solution as well. So it's that combination of focus, understanding of the network, and a change of the service provision to make that achievable.
How do you position both of yourselves when you're selling your concepts to the outside world? I mean, to a customer, we've had this with audio and with other elemental technologies where, you're in the middle of it, thick of it, it's all about standards here and standards there. And some people forget the customer finds it incredibly confusing. It stops the buying cycle dead until something's come out of it and there's a bit more clarity. Do you find that, how clear can you be about the benefits of either? I mean, I haven't met anybody yet who's actually clear on either of you in terms of what you offer and how the whole offering is differentiated. There's just one solution that works.
It's because HD-based T spends a lot of time pretending they work on an IP network, right?
No.
This is it. They are so mischievous, aren't
Actually, to be honest, every time our customers or our and the end customers asking us about it, we never say that it's either or. We actually believe AV over IP is more complementary than competing with HD-based T. HD-based T first is a packet-based protocol. It's not a circuit switch or anything like that. It is designed from the ground up for audio-video distribution in small scale, from a point-to-point and multiple ports, but in a small scale. It was never intended to go the wide world network that AV over IP can do. And therefore, when we talk to customers, we say, look, we bring a great solution for a specific problem. You could use that. It's, again, higher performing because we do no compression or light compression, and it's lower cost. It's simple. The maintenance and the installation is simple. But if you need to go beyond that room, beyond that floor, use AV over IP. So we do believe that and we've actually seen, I don't know if you guys have been at the Crestron booth on their innovation center or future of innovation. You'd see there products that combine HDBaseT into their AV over IP product. And that makes total sense to me. So I don't think, and I'll never bash SDVoE is something that is not relevant. It doesn't have its point. It has its corner, but I don't think that it is going to replace HDBaseT.
I actually only disagree on the last point. Let me say some nice things now, because we are actually friends.
I know you are. I know you are.
First of all, HDBaseT is a great technology, and over the years, I've been one of its #1 proponents, right? I think the challenge that you face as we go to the future is that today, the hybrid approach makes sense. And that's because today, I think, maybe you think differently, but I think we even agree, HDBaseT's key advantages right now are cost and simplicity. Of course, performance, but I'm treating performance as a given almost, right? But right now, for small systems like you described, there's usually a cost advantage for an HDBaseT type of system, and there's the simplicity you talk about, right? You plug in this end, you plug in that end, and it goes, right? There's no arguing with that. The challenge is that over the long term, Ethernet becomes, we're building better and better tools to make installation more automated and more simple, so that even in the most complex IP scenarios, things become closer and closer to plug and play. And we see cost constantly being driven out of the IP systems by two things. Number one, the IT side of this, right, where the Ciscos and Netgears and the other big players of that world spend their lives driving cost out of Ethernet infrastructure, right? And on the AV side, as we see more and more development, right, Semtech, one of our founding members, has now put out a chip dedicated to performing SDVoE. That's going to drive down the cost of the AV side of this. So I think while today, the reality is that a hybrid approach makes sense. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you've got a room with a 2x1 matrix, you should replace that with a 10 gig switch and 3 encoders and decoders. That's silly, and I'm not that silly, right? But over time, I just feel like that crossover point of where a big system becomes a little system and vice versa is getting down and down as the IP software improves, as the level of education in the industry improves, and as cost gets driven more and more out of those systems.
So do you see in the future that devices won't have video outputs, that they won't need it because it will just go onto the network and stream across the, and effectively create this virtual?
When we talk big picture, yeah, I do think that. I think in general what happens is this move from analog electronics to digital electronics, and eventually from sort of specialized digital electronics, right? The ASICs that Gabi and I work on, and the FPGAs and all that, and frankly into general compute, right? Meaning x86s and ARMs that have enough power that they can perform whatever his or my application is, or anybody else's. And in the long term, general compute is on the network.
Yeah, and I think that's undeniable. You see this happening in the market already. So we talk about AV over IP, but it's a spectrum. So there's the very high bitrate stuff that you guys do. There's the broadcast compressions, H.264. They go straight to the panel today. There isn't a decoder there. There's a device that can render graphics, so you've actually got the application that the customer wants that's got the video component. So it's done today. The next transition is, I agree with you, at the end of the day, if there's one thing that's happened with networking over the last 30 years, cost goes down, speed goes up, and that curve is still very much alive today. And as you say, the computes are going to go down in cost as well. So the curve is undeniable. We'll do more, higher bit rate over less costly networks over time. I think that's.
Right, but I think we should be cautious with the predictions, because it really, AV is such a large and distributed and fragmented market that there are markets or sub-markets within it that will always need an output of an HDMI and an input of an HDMI. Yeah. So we need to be careful on the broadcast and the very large Netflix type of distribution. I'm fully with you guys. But I'm a user in a corporate, and I'm coming into a meeting room. I want to present from my laptop. I will need a DisplayPort or an HDMI output to go the long distance to the display or projector up in the ceiling.
That's also
Yeah.
true. I mean, you made the point earlier on that there are always circumstances for certain applications, and will the HDMI interface disappear tomorrow? Not a chance. But there is a journey we're on, and I agree with what you're saying about the cost journey, the performance journey with both the platforms and the integration of those platforms into the panels themselves or the display technology themselves. That's definitely coming down the track. There will always be a place for technologies like HDMI and maybe even SDI and stuff from the broadcast world.
Well, I was hoping to go on for an hour about this, but we've only got half an hour, so I'm going to bring the session slightly to close. But I mean, do we have any questions here? I'm sure that there may be one or perhaps two. If you'd like to ask one, then we can throw this catch box at you, which you're getting great pleasure in doing. That's the real reason. We just want to throw objects at you, get lots of satisfaction. It's ominous silence.
Anyone out there? I can't see.
Yeah. One thing about one last question: skills and capabilities into integrators. Part of it says, well, you don't want to change network configurations to start getting deep into networking as an integrator and everything else. But I do wonder where we get some of the skills from. Is AV going to have to start raising its game in terms of networking training and topologies and goodness knows what else that there is in IT?
I think there's some of that, but I think the best thing integrators can do is educate themselves to the level of being able to have an intelligent conversation about the network, being able to explain, here, I want to put these boxes on your network, Mr. IT Director. Here's what these boxes do. Here's what they mean to your network. Because I think, Simon, you alluded to, the end customer tends to own that network. They've got an IT group and an IT director that wants to be in charge of it, and that's okay. So our role as AV guys is not to all turn into IT directors. Our role is to be able to explain, here's the devices I want to put on your network, here's why I want to do it, and here's what the impact to your network will be, so that they can make the right adjustments and accounting for it.
I do, and I think there's the next step of that, the overlap of that, is actually then to support that testing, approval of actually it is delivering what you're expecting. So quality of service, the video quality that comes out the back end of that, all those bits is the bit where the integrator has the ability to do that, but the IT network team don't. So they may get it on the network, but actually it may break up. And that's the piece. That's an opportunity.
There's so much collaboration that needs to happen between the integrator and the IT department.
Absolutely.
Those guys have to really learn to speak each other's language.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, quality of service. I've got to ask that. Right. Justin, Gabi, Simon, and Mike, thank you so much. This is a great panel, by the way. If you have any questions, perhaps catch you later, or whatever. But you've got the key guys in all this here, so please take advantage whilst you have the opportunity when they're all in one spot, which doesn't happen very often. But
if there's no question, I can give a great advice I've been given once about predictions and blabbing the future and daydreaming. Never take laxative and sleeping pills at the same time.
Fantastic. Thank you.
If you have any questions, Gabi and I will both be at the SDVoE booth for the rest of the afternoon.
Yeah. I will be moving there pretty quickly, I should imagine. Yeah, okay.
Thank you very
so
much.
much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gabi. Thanks.